video conference is different than in person, but it is necessary. Under the circumstances, we are doing the best we can to maintain transparency and due process. I would appreciate everyone's patience and cooperation as we work through the meeting. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag
of the United States
of of America,
and to the republic
and to the
for
republic
which it stands,
for which it stands,
one nation,
one nation,
under God,
indivisible,
with liberty
with
liberty
and
justice
for all. Thank you. Roll call. Seeing that this meeting is being held remotely, when I call your name, please indicate your presence. Councilmember Brox.
Here.
Councilmember Fulch.
Here.
Councilmember Fox.
Here.
Councilmember
Here.
Liefeld. Councilmember Lund.
Here.
And Councilmember Vaughn.
Here.
Let the roll reflect that all council members are present and we do have a quorum. Council members, are there any corrections to the minutes from the regular meeting and the workshop from April 5th and the workshop on April 10th? Seeing none, they are approved. Tonight we'll have comments from the audience, and for public comments, we have options for comments to be mailed prior to the meeting, as well as an interactive feature during the meeting. For the emailed comments, they have been forwarded to the City Council and their receipt is acknowledged. Please recognize that items not on the agenda will not be discussed this evening. We ask the attendees use the raised hand feature and they will be invited to speak one at a time. I also want to remind everyone that the public comment period is not intended for extended dialogue. Is there anyone that would like to wish to speak to the council? Okay, I see no raised hands. Council members, are there any items to be considered? Okay, council, I would accept a motion to approve the consent agenda with consideration that number 4 was taken off prior to the meeting. That event has been canceled. I would accept a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Councilmember Brox and Councilmember Fulch. At this point, council, do you have any discussion? Clerk Henderson, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yep, yes. You're on mute, Erica.
How about now?
Yep, you're good.
Okay,
Yes.
fantastic. Councilmember Vaughn.
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch.
Yes.
Councilmember Fox.
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld.
Yes.
Councilmember Lund. Councilmember Brox.
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
And that motion prevails. Tonight, under awarding of contracts and public hearings, we have a resolution to award a contract for the 2021 Mill and Overlay Program. For this item, we have an introduction by our city engineer, Ryan Stemsky. Ryan, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Our Mill and Overlay Program is an annual program in which we resurface roads that qualify. So that's a 2-inch removal and replacement of a new road surface. This year, we've selected candidate roads. We have portions of Westview, Southview, 4th Street from General Sieben to Pleasant, and Old Mill Court. On March 25th, the city received bids on this project. We received 6 bids, and we received a low bid from Bituminous Roadways in the amount of $438,874. This amount comes well within our budget of $500,000 budgeted in our 2021 program. With Bituminous Roadways in the past, and they're a contractor, and staff recommends award in the set amount for the 2021 mill and overlay program. That, any questions?
Thank you, Ryan. Council, any discussion? Okay, if not, then I would accept a motion to approve the resolution awarding contract for 2021 mill and overlay program.
So moved, Your Honor.
Councilmember Liefeld and Councilmember Fox with a second. Council, do you have any discussion? Clerk Henderson, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn,
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch,
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld,
Yes.
Member Lund,
Yes.
Councilmember Brock,
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. And that motion prevails. Tonight, we also have a resolution with Ryan to let us know about the contract for the sewer lining program.
Yes, thanks, Mayor, members of the council. Our lining program for the sanitary sewer system, we combine our budget, so that's a program that occurs every other year. So we do it in a 2-year cycle. We do it in odd years. And so in 2021, we have our sanitary sewer lining program. This year, we selected sewers that basically are repeat offenders for excessive cleaning and maintenance of old clay pipe. And we have a budget amount of, $332,000 to address this work. On April 1st, we received 4 bids for this work with a low bid from In Situ Form. Their total bid amount was $272,855.90. So we're well within that budget amount of $332,000. In Situ Form has done work in the city in the past. They come highly recommended as a competent contractor in this field of work. And so with that, staff is recommending award to In Situ Form and their low bid amount. Answer any questions the council may have.
Thank you, Ryan. Any discussion, council? I would look for a motion to accept a resolution receiving bids and awarding contract for project 2021-2, 2021 sanitary sewer lining program.
Mayor, I have a question.
Councilmember Brooks.
Could you talk about if this contract is awarded tonight, what the timeline is for this project?
Councilmember Brooks, a little unique. We have some lining proposed over the golf course area, so Dakota Pines Golf Course. And we work with the groundskeeper out there to do the lining work with, dragging equipment and vehicles over portions of the golf course in frozen conditions. So we don't want to be out restoring golf course area, obviously, through our easements that we have in the golf course. The contractor anticipates mobilizing when the ground is frozen. So that's probably December, maybe January. It'll be at the end of the year, so they can come mobilize in, get all the project done in one shot, and adhere to our city specifications that the golf course lining work be done on frozen grounds. So it'll be a while yet. And we will definitely have a pre-con close to that start date and get all our notifications out to the impacted properties at that time. So there'll be a little bit of a lag.
Right,
So, good
my neighbors
question.
will be asking me because it's gonna go right in front of our house. Thank you.
Yeah. Questions? I will accept a motion.
Second.
Councilmember Vaughn and seconded by Councilmember Fulch. Additional discussion, council? Clerk Henderson, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn,
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch,
Yes.
Councilmember Fox, Councilmember Liefeld,
Yes.
Councilmember Lund,
Yes.
Councilmember Brock,
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. That motion prevails. Okay, Ryan, for this item, we'll have you to let us know about these proposed special assessments for 2020 infrastructure improvements. And this is a public hearing with potential action by council.
Thank you, Mayor. Can I get the ability to share my screen? It looks like I'm disabled. You? All right, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, so as mayor was introducing this item for 15th Street, our improvement, phase 2 of improvements, we're at the point in the process to conduct our assessment hearing for the project. Again, just a quick reminder, this is the continuation of our reconstruction program of 15th Street. We're picking up at Pine and extending those improvements to Pleasant. As we discussed last month in our scope of project improvements, the total project cost is estimated to be $3.8 million. That funding breaks down, as you see in the pie chart here, about $1.1 million in bonded debt, $150,000 in state aid account support. The $581,850 is proposed in project assessments. $130,000 from the wastewater fund and approximately $800,000 from our water fund. So to determine the assessments, we have a process that we follow. The first step of that assessment rate.
Ryan, real quick.
You're not sharing.
You're sharing your screen. We're not seeing advanced slides.
Oh. Is it advancing now?
I see the assessment rates.
Can we see that, Dan?
On the, well, it was assessment rates. Now it's results of assessment report back to assessment rates. It looks like it's working now.
Okay. I was trying to keep it in presentation mode, but for some reason it's popping me out. So hopefully everybody can see just fine. And we'll just continue along this way. So as I was saying, the first step in determining an assessment rate is the city does hire an independent firm to prepare an appraisal report. That appraiser looks at the land valued before and after the proposed street improvement. The difference between the before and after values is the special benefit attributed to the private property along the corridor. We did hire BRKW to do that appraisal report. We've worked with them several times in the past. The results of the appraisal report, the appraisal firm determined reasonable value benefits range of $89 to $99 per foot for a small single family lot averaging 70 feet of frontage along the corridor. About $73 to $83 a foot for the medium-sized properties, averaging 95 feet in front footage along the corridor. And then $77 to $87 per foot for a large single-family lot, averaging 150 feet of frontage along the corridor. For Calvary Christian Church property, that was evaluated at $44 per foot. Now, the church property there, you'll see a little bit lower rate because they have 459 feet of frontage. So the assessment is valued across the entire property. And so with such a large frontage, that's why that cost per foot breaks down to be much less than what you're seeing on the single family lots. That was what the assessment report yielded. We continue on with our policy. Our ordinance directs that collector and municipal state aid streets are assessed at 25% of the project cost of the street and storm sewer. That assessment then is based on abutting frontage. There are a couple exceptions, and that is if we have a irregular shaped lot, we do normalize those lots by looking at their neighboring properties and finding a comparable and fair associated lot size and frontage. And then also corner lots, we do allow for a break, if you will. Corner lots, since they have two sides, the short side is calculated 100% of the length, while the long side is calculated at only 25% of the length to kind of give those corner lots a break. So the recommended assessment rates is the calculation of 25% of the street and storm sewer costs distributed across the properties. These amounts were confirmed by BRKW to be less than or equal to the special benefit of the improvements to the properties being assessed. So basically we're at or below that amount when we ran this ordinance-driven calculation. Process was presented and supported by the operations committee of the council. And so that gets us to a single family lot rate of $66.48 per front foot. And then for our church property, that $44 per front foot. The payments of assessment is quite a process, but basically we would send out an official statement in the fall time or end of summer. And payments would then be accepted beginning October 1st, 2021, no sooner than that. Partial payments are accepted in this process. Any amounts that remain after the November 30th date are certified automatically to the Dakota County property taxes with that $50 fee to do so. There are no interest or fees when this assessment amount is paid in full, and that needs to be done by that November 30th date. If they are not paid in full, then the 10-year payoff for the property tax statement starts beginning spring of 2022. And then the interest rates for that financing typically range between 3% and 5%. In recent years, we've kind of been at that mid 3%. So to just kind of give an example, picking the medium-sized lot at 95 feet of frontage, the rate would be calculated at 95 feet times $66.48. That gives a $6,315 approximate assessment amount. So when that's paid through the county property taxes, that would be $6,315 divided by those 10 installments. That would be $631.56 annually, plus that 3% interest for that first year would be $221. Obviously, that amount decreases, so the interest decreases each year thereafter. But in that first year, the total annual installment would be $853. Breaking that down monthly, that's about $71 a month, which is kind of important if you're paying a monthly mortgage to kind of figure that in your payment. And then we do on this project have financial aid with assessments. We do have assessment abatement again this year. We set up the project specifications that way to accept this financial aid. The Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG program, is funded by the federal government. It is a program dependent on income qualification. So that's a reviewed application. The applications and the process to follow them are mailed out to all property owners in late summer of 2021. Applications are very clear on the application, but they are to be returned to Dakota County Community Development Agency, or the CDA. They review the applications, the city staff does not. And also qualification is determined by the CDA. There is a full abatement qualification. So that would be your entire assessment amount would be paid if you do qualify. And then for any amount left over thereafter, there are options for partial abatement if you qualify as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to any questions or discussion, and then ultimately allow the mayor to conduct the public hearing.
Thank you, Ryan. Council, do we have any questions for Ryan?
Your Honor,
Sure, Councilmember Fulch.
thanks. Thank you, Your Honor. So Ryan, I just had a couple technical questions. So when I was looking at our packet for all of the assessments, it looked like they range from about $4,900 to maybe $10,300. And so what was the average assessment amount that was going then to property owners with those kind of outliers? You had said that the average monthly bill was $71 per month. I was just curious, what's the average total assessment?
I would say it ranges in that $4,000 to $5,000 range.
5,000? Well,
Yeah.
most of them are at least five to 6,000.
On the for medium lots, it's that $6,000 range. So it depends on that frontage, obviously.
Okay. And so when you say that if they don't have the money to be able to pay it, so it's a 10-year term. And so does the city float or finance that money over the 10 years? Or is there a third-party vendor that takes over it and it's kind of like a loan process?
The city gets repaid that amount over 10 years.
So, but we're directly dealing with it. So the city always is on the hook for that money, and then we're assessing it over the 10 years. There's not an intermediary, like a third party bank or something like that in between?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. And then is there anything that limits what can be included within a property assessment? Like, for instance, we've talked in the past about the problem of the ash trees that are in the right of way, and then whether or not they should be or could be removed at the time of a neighborhood infrastructure project, so that you could then, remove it and the stump, level the earth, put in the new sidewalk, and have a nice fresh right of way. Would that be potentially something that we could be doing, where we could be handling the removal of additional trees as we're going along in these projects? That limits us from not being able to do that.
I would say what's limiting is the policy set. What we do from an engineering standpoint is, if those trees, we walk the trees, or the corridor with our city forester. We look at the construction plans. If construction requires those trees to be removed, and I think we do have 5 or 6 of them proposed because of construction, they're already incorporated in the project because of the construction need and the cuts that we have. Obviously, if we're cutting one side of a tree and our city forester says, well, that is beyond treatment, we're not going to leave one side cut and hope it comes back. We'll take the whole tree. So that's where we work in coordination with the city forester and our construction program to take those ones. Now, if there's a change in policy, that's a different animal, and we're not set up to do that, that'd be something we'd have to be directed to do and follow that process. I don't think we have very many ash trees in the inventory on this corridor. So I don't think this is a project that has very many, suspects of EAB.
They're not dense in that area. I get it, along the right of way, but it is something that could potentially be incorporated. And then for instance, it's my property and I have an ash tree in the right of way. Can you attribute that tree removal against my personal property, or would that just kind of like go into the overall project cost for it all and then going on your formula based and then it gets divvied up that way?
Yeah, if it's not related to the construction, that expense, we don't have a mechanism to roll it in the project costs or the assessments. No.
At this very moment.
Correct.
But
we could, I don't know. Keep in mind our assessments are determined by that value added to the property. I'd have to have a conversation with, several appraisers to see where that rates. There might not be any associated benefit of removing a tree. Some people would think the contrary, right? So that would be a question for our appraiser to see how that would factor in. But that question could be asked.
thank you very much, Ryan, for answering my questions. I appreciate it.
Any other council discussion? At this time, I will open the public hearing. In the audience, if you would please use the raised hand feature, and I will bring you in for your questions. The public hearing is open. Anyone has any concerns or questions, please use the raise feature. Seeing no raised hands, at this time I will close the public hearing. And council discussion, any additional discussion? Okay, then I would accept a motion to approve a resolution to adapt the assessments for project 2021-1 15th Street Infrastructure Improvements Phase 2.
So moved, Your Honor.
Councilmember Liefeld and Councilmember Vaughn seconds. Additional discussion? Person, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn,
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch,
Yes.
Councilmember Fox,
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld,
Yes.
Councilmember Lund,
Yes.
Councilmember Brock, Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. That motion prevails. Ryan? We have a public hearing also for the code amendment for the Parklets. This item we have introduction by Community Development Director John Hinsman. Welcome, John.
And City Council members, tonight we've got a public hearing and second reading for a small amendment to our parklet ordinance. The council may be asking, we just adopted a parklet ordinance not too long ago. What are we looking at amendments already? I'll get to that here in just a second. I will share the screen, which will explain what we have, what we're looking at here today. What we're looking at amending is the distance setback between the center line of angled parking areas. This is 2nd Street, for example. Right now within our code, we have a 20-foot minimum setback requirement from the center line to the edge of the parklet. This works out really well if you have an 18-foot long parklet that is parallel with the angled parking line, which would be 16 feet back at this point. However, what we're seeing from a couple individuals is that they are not proposing to situate their parklet in such a manner, but instead to take the 18 feet straight out. Taking it 18 feet straight out limits that area from 20 feet down to 18 feet. So we had a conversation with our Public Works Director and other city staff to see if this would be amenable. They were amenable to it. However, they did state that this would be something we would monitor over time here. We believe that we're comfortable with the 18 feet and recommend the change as it moves forward tonight, but this will be something we'll monitor throughout the summer, and hopefully this is something that can continue. So we have an ordinance amendment before you tonight. This does have a public hearing component to it, and you may open it at this time, or I can stand for any questions. Again, this would be the only amendment to the parklet ordinance would be this distance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. Time, I will open the public hearing, for the amendment, and please use your raised hand feature and bring you in for any questions or concerns. Hearing is now open. Seeing no raised hands, at this point, I will close the public hearing and ask council for any discussion. Nothing. So then, council, I would accept a motion to approve an ordinance of the city of Hastings amending city code chapter 90 streets and sidewalks, section 90.17 parklets.
So moved,
So
Your
moved.
Honor.
I'll second that.
Member Roach and Councilmember Leifeld. Additional discussion, council? Please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn,
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch,
Yes.
Councilmember Fox,
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld,
Yes.
Member Lund, Councilmember Brox, Mayor Fassbender.
Yes, and that motion prevails. Council, we have a public hearing tonight for a parklet and a liquor license amendment for the Onion Grill, 100 Sibley Street. John, you want to continue?
Thank you, Mayor and City Council members. Tonight, a public hearing for a parklet, as the mayor pointed out here, for the Onion Grill. I'll put some images on the screen to show a little bit more of what we're seeking here. This is the Onion Grill in Sibley Street here. This area here is the parking spaces. These are parallel parking spaces, a little bit different than 2nd Street. So these are a little bit shorter. The fencing would go around as such for about 42 feet and then back up next to the building at this location. It would not go beyond the curb. It would roughly be similar dimensions to what we saw last year, albeit a really good, nice job at what they're doing for the amenities they're preparing for this one here. So that is what we're looking at. The distance between the parklet and the center line meets that 14-foot requirement for parallel parking that we did establish within the ordinance. This is what it would look like here. So it would be at the street surface, have some decorative planters at this location and a fence demarcation. So a really nice addition down here. You can see this is roughly the extent of it as well. So you would still have the passenger traffic, or the pedestrian traffic along the sidewalk that would still be able to move through. Would not be routed around like last year. So pedestrian traffic continuing through here. We did have our staff review this. They are supportive of it. And this is a public hearing. You can open it at this time, or I can stand for any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. At this time, I will open the public hearing. Please use the raised hand feature and I will bring you in if you have any questions or on this. This is a public hearing for the Onion Grill. No raised hands. At this time, I will close the public hearing and any discussion, council. Lund, you're unmuted. Is that?
Oh, sorry. I'll be abstaining out of an abundance of caution on this one, but
Other council discussion? Council, I would accept a motion to approve the parklet and the liquor license amendment for the Onion Grill.
So moved.
Motion to approve.
Councilmember Fulch and Councilmember Brox with a second. Additional council discussion? Clerk, Councilmember Fox.
Record again, similar to Councilmember Lund, I will also be abstaining from this vote.
Okay. And please call the roll.
Member Vaughn. Member Fulch,
Yes.
Member Fox,
Abstain, please.
Member Liefeld,
Yes.
Councilmember Lund,
Abstain.
Councilmember Brock,
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. And that motion prevails 5-0 with 2 abstaining, Councilmember Fox and Councilmember Lund. John? Okay, tonight's under community development. We've already handled the second reading, and we've also handled the issuance of parklet and liquor license for the Onion. Tonight, we also have a resolution to transfer property to HEDRA, Quality One Woodworking, Enterprise Avenue and 31st Street. John, would you like to on that?
Absolutely, Mayor and City Council members. I'll share my screen to show you what we're proposing tonight. This is Quality One Woodworking in the Industrial Park, Millard Avenues to the west, 31st Street to the south. The red area represents their current holdings here. They have a large factory building shown here, and they're proposing to make it even larger, which is great. They propose a 50,000 square foot addition shown in yellow. This is something that has been proposed by Quality One for quite some time here, and we're eager to see this move forward. With this moving forward, there are 2 properties that would need to be acquired to make this project happen. The first one being about a 1.8 acre property located here. This is at 31st and Enterprise Avenue. The reason for the acquisition here is for some truck trailer parking and stormwater drainage that would be necessary to accommodate this property. You may recall that there's truck docks right now in this location. They would be moved down, and there's additional spaces needed here. The other would be a small property here, about 0.23 acres, that would need to be acquired to extend a roadway, which is a connection point to serve their dust collector units, which are located here. So these 2 properties here are owned by the city as part of the industrial park, and we're proposing that they be transferred to HEDRA. This is similar to the actions we had a last meeting related to HEDRA being a more correct authority to be able to provide for economic development and for the subsidies of land for development. And so this would be the action we have in the resolution is to transfer this property to HEDRA, and then for HEDRA to ultimately enter into a development agreement with Quality One to transfer the property. There'd be preconditions of that agreement related to site plan approval and other entitlements before that occurred. And it's also subject to our land credit program. Council may recall that in the industrial park, we do have a program that writes down the amount of price that we charge for property dependent on the value that's added and the jobs that are created. In this one, the property value itself is about $136,000 between both properties. When you take a look at what's being added from this property, about $3.5 million in improvements and 35 jobs, the credit far exceeds the amount of the land. So they would transfer this, we would transfer this property for $1. So the actions we're asking for you tonight is to authorize both these within the attached resolution, the transfer of property to HEDRA and the approval of the land credit sale on this. What else we've got on the property, this has an idea of what it would look like, the proposed addition being here, additional parking areas, and then a view of what the building would look like. I can stand for any questions that you may have. I also will note that we do have representatives from Quality One in the audience tonight if you have any questions for them. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, John. Council, any discussion? This is a great addition to our industrial park, especially with the jobs as well. So could I get a motion, council, for a resolution approving the transfer of real property to the Hastings Economic Development and Redevelopment Authority and approving land credit sale to Quality One Woodworking LLC? Councilmember Brox. Second by Councilmember Fulch. Additional discussion, council? Clerk Henderson, please call the roll.
Member Vaughn,
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch,
Yes.
Councilmember Fox,
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld,
Yes.
Councilmember Lund, Councilmember Brock, Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. Motion prevails. Can I have another resolution to transfer property to HEDRA, Miller Electrical, Enterprise Avenue, and Spiral Boulevard? John?
Mayor, City Council members, we've had some good activity within the industrial park. So another proposal before you tonight. I'll share my screen to show you what we're looking at. This is a property located at the southeast corner of Spiral Boulevard and Enterprise Avenue. Miller Electrical, which is located here, proposes to purchase this property to build a 17,000 square foot office warehouse building. The actions on this are similar to the last request, which is the authorize to transfer property to HEDRA, and HEDRA would enter into a purchase and development agreement with Miller Electrical to transfer that property. That would be per the land credit calculation, and also per use entitlements for site plan and other city council actions, which would come forwarded to you in the near future. When you look at the property here, you may ask, why are they looking to build a new property? Miller Electrical recently changed hands about a year or two ago. The new owner bought the business, but the former owner retained the property. The new owner will desire to build a new building for his business and anticipates growth that would occur. When you take a look at the property and the plans itself, these are some concept plans that were drawn up. It shows the building over here, about 17,000 square feet, and hopefully some potential future additions to the south of a comparable size. This is an example of what he has brought forward to show what the building would look like in the future. So nice type of construction. So tonight, what we're asking for you to do is to authorize transfer of the property, approve the land credit sale. The land credit sale on this one, similar type of valuation, about $134,000, $1.5 million in improvements, so that land credit exceeds the value of the land, so it will be transferred for $1. So I can stand for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Council, any discussion for John? Questions? And I would accept a motion to approve a resolution approving the transfer of real property to the Hastings Economic Development and Redevelopment Authority and approving land credit sale to Miller Electric LLC. Councilmember
Okay.
Fox, and a second by Councilmember Vaughn. Additional discussion, council? Please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn, Councilmember Fulch,
Yes.
Councilmember Fox, Councilmember Liefeld, Councilmember Lund,
Yes.
Councilmember Brock,
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. All right, tonight we also have an authorization to consider of the city charter and ordinance administrative citations. For this item, we will have John continue.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and City Council members. Tonight, we'd like to bring before you a concept of a change related to nuisance ordinances. Nuisance ordinance are those type of code enforcement violations dealing with property issues, things such as junk, abandoned cars, exterior storage, property maintenance. Under the current regulations we have, these are criminal citations. So what we hope to have happen is we make a property owner aware of something, they take care of it, and problem solved. And that happens in most cases. However, when you have a situation in which there is some reluctance among the property owner to take care of a violation, it runs through the criminal court system. The criminal court system is not the best fit for these type of violations. They're not a high priority for the criminal courts. They can take a long time. The results generally are going to be a small fine. These generally require maybe multiple hearings, and each time a hearing takes place, an updated inspection needs to happen. So we have a lot of back and forth between our code enforcement staff checking on properties as they move through courts. The result of that being a small fine and not the best situation. So we took a look at this with our city attorney, Corey Land. Corey has developed a process in which code violations would not be handled criminally, but would be handled administratively. And there would be a couple of changes that would be necessary to do that. First of all, why would this take place and what are the advantages? From an administrative standpoint, you're able to directly assess a violation to take care of the time that has been put in by city staff to take care of it, which is something we can't do criminally. When we look at this administratively, we're looking at taking this forward through an administrative law judge, and this is more of a negotiation. The results of that have been more fruitful, have been more timely. And so this is something that we would like to consider doing. We took this concept forward to the Historic Preservation Committee of City Council, explained it to them. They recommended we move forward in looking at changes at their meeting. To be clear, what we're looking for tonight is not any adoption of anything. We're looking for your direction as the council to proceed. We wanted to make sure before we take the time to amend the city charter and put together proposed ordinance amendments for this, that we had the support of the council in doing so. So I know there would be a lot of questions that would be coming up that we probably don't have the answers to right now. The specifics will come up at a later date, but the action we're looking for you tonight to consider is to have staff move forward to prepare these amendments for your consideration. And Corey, who was the person that knows much more about this than I do, is also available for questions. You have the specifics as well. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Any council discussion, any questions for Corey or John at this point? Councilmember Liefeld?
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. John, so just to try and follow along, we get a nuisance call. Council, we contact, go through staff. Would the code enforcement staff then be handing out that one that we're dealing with, weeds and trash in the yard? They just don't ever seem to care. It just, every year it's the same thing. So if this little fine that we're talking about isn't driving them to clean up their messes, is this something that you feel, aside from that back and forth you talked about, would this give us more of a position of line and making sure that things are actually done? I guess I've never had the issue myself, but if someone were to turn me in and I didn't do it and I pay my fine, then do I have to do it or do I not have to do it?
Start out here and maybe Corey can add to it her experiences. The one thing that I've learned is that from a timing standpoint, it's a much shorter process. And so that's advantageous. The difficulty always in code enforcement is that fine line between a person's right for due process and the anticipation of conformance with the code violation. And I think this works out to be a more timely process than the criminal procedure. And Corey, if you have anything to add to that.
I do. Thank you, Your Honor, members of the council. So typically, and I don't know the exact specifics of the situation you're talking about, but when city staff, code enforcement gets frustrated enough, they will issue the criminal citation. That then triggers a whole different process, and it is very time consuming. It is very lengthy, and in the end, not very satisfying. So my understanding is that you don't typically abate things like weeds, which you could. Administrative citations is just another tool in the toolbox for you. So if you feel like for those really problematic people that sometimes the only way to get their attention is a criminal citation, you still have that option. If you feel like there are those situations like weeds where the city can simply go on and abate the nuisance for them, you have that option. If you feel like for the junk where you don't necessarily want to go and take people's things and clean it up for them, because sometimes trash is another person's treasure. And so you do have to be a little bit careful about that. Then you can issue an administrative citation, which then does impose a fine. If they pay it they still have to clean it up. So that doesn't alleviate the burden of them cleaning it up. Every day is a new violation. So they could be cited again. And the second time, they don't have to be given notice because they had notice. They knew the problem was there and they chose not to clean it up. So the second time the fine doubles, have to be given notice. If they fail to pay, then you have, like you typically have at the end of every year, any water utility bills that failed to get paid, you assess those. This would go on that assessment roll. It's added to their property taxes, and they have to pay it in a lump when they pay their property taxes. It tends to get people's attention. These are not astronomical fines that we're talking about. It could be anywhere from $50 to $200. If it doubles, obviously it's going to get more than that. But it's just enough to get their attention that most people recognize they don't want to have multiple fines. They don't want to have it added to their property taxes, and they will take care of the problem. For those that don't, you just continue to fine them and assess them, and at least then you're having cost recovery. And if you find that that's just not enough, then you can explore other options. But those are the extreme cases, not the normal cases. That helps answer your questions.
Thank you very much so.
Does Councilmember Fulch?
Thank you, Your Honor. As was mentioned by John, the Historic Preservation Committee of the City Council did have a discussion about this, and the group was very supportive of the administrative citation process. But we did also talk about having, as Attorney Land was beginning to talk about abatement steps, and specifically, like for instance, mowing. If they would get a weed violation, then sending in a vendor to do the mowing and then charging that back. And so, so I guess my question for John is, John, when is it that you'll be coming back to the council then? If we give you the direction that we'd like to go towards, the administrative citations, what's your process in developing some of these abatement programs then to deal with, for instance, weeds and then junk?
Hey, council member, I wish I had a better answer for you on that. Soon, there's a couple of different steps we're going to have here. One is going to be the city charter itself. So we're going to we're going to reform the city charter commission, because in order to have the authority to grant administrative citations, there needs to be an amendment to the city charter, which is our city constitution. So there's that step of it. Once that's done, then there is the city ordinances. It doesn't mean that they can't happen concurrently on that, but those are two steps, and the city charter amendment has its own peculiarities to it. So if we get the authority from the council tonight, we'll start work on both those items. One of them is more administrative and procedural. The other one is much more substantive, and that is looking through our specific code at our violations and what amendments would be necessary. And I do know that our building official, Travis Dunn, and our code enforcement officer, Dawn West, are already beginning that process. So we hope to have something in the near future, council member.
Questions, council? Okay, then I would accept a motion to direct staff to prepare amendments to the city charter and city code to consider regulation of nuanced violations through the issuance of administrative citations.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Councilmember Brox and Councilmember Fox. Additional discussion? Clerk Henderson, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn,
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch,
Yes.
Councilmember Fox,
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld,
Yes.
Councilmember Lund,
Yes.
Councilmember Brox,
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. And that motion prevails. Okay, also tonight with John, we have a resolution to authorize sale of HEDRA property to Luke Siewert. John, you may continue.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council members. I'm going to share my screen here to show you the property that we're looking at here tonight. This is a small parking lot, about 9,700 square feet, that is owned by HEDRA. As you can see, the parking lot itself doesn't have a lot of value today because we put a great big parking lot over here a few years ago, about 100 spaces. This was originally purchased by the HRA back in 1985. They were the predecessor of HEDRA to provide downtown parking for general use and also for the Mississippi Terrace senior housing across the street. Those items are no longer necessary for this. Over the years, we've been approached by a couple of different entities to purchase this property in conjunction with the house next door. There's a duplex next door, and development has been considered here. This is happening again here with Luke Siewert. Luke has purchased this property here, and what he would like to do would be to combine both properties, clear the properties, and build a 31-unit apartment building. This would be a 3-story apartment building, 3 stories over a ground floor of parking that would be at grade. And we've had several discussions with HEDRA over the past few months as to this proposal. HEDRA is the property owner, would need to authorize sale of it. And when we consider sales of property, we take a look at a couple of different items on that. One, the need for the property, it's need for the property by HEDRA. In this case, we don't have a particular need for it anymore. That has been supplanted by the parking lot. Second, market value. We have an assessed valuation of the property itself, which is about $60,000. And we've discussed that with Mr. Siewert as a starting point for purchase. Mr. Siewert has looked at his property, wanted to acquire that property for a lower price. So in that situation, it would be a subsidy. In looking at subsidies, what we do is take a look at what the need for the subsidy would be. We had Mr. Siewert share with Northland Financial Advisors his financial information and his pro forma for development of the site. So Northland took a look at that, was able to review some items, but not all items. There was one item particularly related to the approval of the financing for the site that Mr. Siewert has not yet achieved. He has some commitments from a bank, but we don't have the official bank commitment letter yet, which is something Northland requires in order for them to give an opinion as to whether a subsidy is justified or not. Granted, the information that Mr. Siewert has provided does justify a gap and a need for that, but our financial advisor cannot make a recommendation on that. So this is something that we've been going back and forth with HEDRA over the last few months on it. And one of the other things that is under consideration from filling a hole in a project is also, does it meet some of our business subsidy requirements, our goals and benchmarks as HEDRA? And within your packet, I listed a few of these. There's about 10 of them all together that we look at, that projects in which HEDRA is involved in a subsidy should meet these requirements. We feel that there's about 4 of these that it does meet. It does increase the tax base. It encourages redevelopment and development investment in what we determine a city designated area. It encourages the reuse, rehabilitation of historic properties, and it eliminates substandard buildings or blighting conditions. So we believe that it meets some of these requirements, or those requirements that are listed as reasons why HEDRA is involved in subsidies for a property. With HEDRA, we've reviewed this on a number of different occasions. We did review this at our last meeting on April 8th. They did recommend approval of this on a 5-2 vote to recommend approval of sale of this property for $1. They looked at the rationale for doing this consistent with the 4 reasons that I just listed for the business subsidy criteria. That's what we're bringing for you tonight. This is a situation in which HEDRA does own the property. However, within the powers that you've invested into HEDRA, you've reserved for yourself the ability to say yay or nay to any property sales. And so what we're asking for HEDRA, or for the council tonight, is to authorize HEDRA to sell the property to the developer. The terms of that would be for $1. Now, what would happen at this point is HEDRA would enter into a purchase and development agreement for the property and would set the terms for the transfer, which would include the land use entitlements for the property, and other items, so that we're not transferring the property until we're very certain that the development will take place. So that's what we're asking for you tonight. Pictures of the property, some images of what the property would look like itself, 3-story apartment over ground floor garage space here. We believe it would be a nice addition to the downtown area, and I can stand for any questions that you may have. And okay, I did stop screen sharing, good. And I believe Mr. Luke Siewert's in the audience as well, if you have any questions for him. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Discussion.
Your Honor.
Councilmember Fulch.
Thank you. I think this is really exciting about what's being proposed for the downtown area, and to have some additional affordable housing options that are down there. So with that said, I think it's terrific. I'm a little confused about this issue of you're asking the council to allow the sell for $1, but it hasn't been approved by which is the city's financing arm. I guess I'm a little confused as to if they're not able to make a recommendation as to whether or not this is an allowable expenditure. Why is it coming before us before that recommendation has been made?
Council member, it's an excellent question, and one that HEDRA has been struggling with for a number of months here. For our policy and what we have done with determining subsidies, we've relied upon our financial advisor to render an opinion here. And so we've gone down that road with them. They've been able to provide some preliminary review of the information, but because there is not a bank loan commitment secured by Mr. Siewert, they're unable to render an opinion. And so HEDRA was faced with a similar type of quandary with, do we take action on this? Is this premature at this point? The developer has been adamant that this is something that's necessary to move this project along. Through a number of meetings and discussions upon HEDRA, ultimately it was decided to move this project forward and sell it for $1. But very valid question.
So just to clarify then, you don't need a formal recommendation from Northland as our financial advisor to move ahead with the sale of the land for $1. It would just be a nice to have. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Council member, I'd say that'd be our policy. I mean, I don't believe there's no written rules that say that Northland has to, or our financial advisor has to render an opinion prior to us taking action. It's a best practice that we have. In this situation, we would be foregoing that to move this forward. By moving it forward, there would be a purchase and development agreement that would be drafted between the city and Mr. Siewert for transfer of the property, and certain items that would need to be in place prior to that transfer. And one of those would be a bank commitment.
Okay. Thank you.
Tonight, John, essentially, we're just trying to get a motion to sell the property for $1, and we will definitely be seeing the next steps moving forward if we pass this tonight.
Mayor, I think that's a good summary. Yeah, from a power standpoint, our council needs to authorize any sale of land that HEDRA enters into. So we want to get your blessing on that one. And then we want you to understand the terms of what that sale would be and be comfortable with it. And that would be for $1. So that would be the action we're asking for tonight. And as the mayor pointed out, this would be the first step. Purchase and development agreement would be entered into, and then the site plan and other land use entitlements would go through Planning Commission and Council.
Thank you, John, for your clarification. Councilmember Vaughn.
Thank you, Your Honor. And Councilmember Fulch, that's a great question. That we have a consultant, but it's not a requirement. It's just someone we use for a program, and we used it before on other properties. I can share with everybody, this is why I voted against it on HEDRA, because I believe the project needs to go forward. I just don't think we should be giving the land away for $1. And I've stated it many times, but it's not worth $60,000 either. So we have metrics used on HEDRA to justify that land sale, and that consultant is the one that gives us a recommendation to say that this justification of subsidy is there. They couldn't answer that, and that's why HEDRA voted on, I heard the words on that meeting of, it's a unique opportunity. We get some housing down there, but unique is a interesting word to use in my opinion, because there's a lot of properties that might be unique to someone else. So what I didn't like about it is we voted is because it's using different parts of goals and benchmarks. There's no metric data there for us to, so I'm looking for the tail effect. If we approve this one for $1, what's the next one that's coming along saying, I'd like to have that for $1 because there's some goals and benchmarks on behalf of the city. So that's a great question, Councilor Fulch. We have a consultant, but we're not requiring it. We're just taking it as advice.
For Brox.
Thank you, Mayor. And I will also state that I was one of the dissenting votes on HEDRA for this as well. And I was mostly supporting Councilmember Vaughn's position from this standpoint of precedent. Our Land for $1 program is a wonderful program. It is for the industrial park specifically. So we don't offer other city properties for $1, just box. They go for a property of an assessed value that is determined. So that was part of the reason why I voted against this. I'm supportive of the project in general. I want the project to go forward. It just feels like the process is a little out of sync. It's the steps for a normal process are not going the same way, and that's not a bad thing. But one of the questions I asked at HEDRA, which I think is applicable here and would be good for the rest of you to hear, was, are there other projects like this in the city where we have used benchmarks instead of a financial consultant or Northland Securities in order to justify a public subsidy of land that's going to be bought and developed by a developer? John, can you speak to that?
Remember, we've had a mixture of land sales between HEDRA and HRA related to market value versus subsidy. On that, we've relied upon a financial consultant to provide some data back on it, and also these benchmarks. You know, the two that I've looked at most recently would be the Art Space project and the Hudson Confluence project, in which we both had financial consultants involved in that. Ultimately, those were dollar sales.
So it's not unprecedented. It has been done before. It's a possibility. It's just that in this case, it was a matter of the documentation that we needed wasn't really there. And so that's where HEDRA was getting hung up. A few of us were getting hung up, was just not having the proper documentation. Now, is that a reason to justify holding up a development because not all the boxes are checked? A risk, but I think it's a risk that we could take, and that's. So I just wanted to state that I was also one that was dissenting on this and kind of what the discussion in HEDRA was, so that everybody was aware, so that you could form your own opinion.
Oh, I think you
Sorry, Councilmember Fox.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Councilmember Brox, thank you for asking that question. That's actually what I was going to ask. Still the new kid on the block, and that's what my memory told me, is that we've actually done this in the downtown district before. But I wanted to verify that precedent was there already. And I also want to compliment John's due diligence with all of this work between Mr. Siewert and HEDRA. I know we started talking about this last fall, a long time ago, and I was still serving on HEDRA. So I think this is just a terrific development, and I'm really eager to see it move forward. And I appreciate that caution and trying to make sure the due diligence and the paperwork is there. And I think John has done a really nice job making sure that it will be there before, like, that is in place, so that we can sign the paperwork officially. Just looking for our encouragement of the development. And I think Mr. Siewert has a novel idea here, and it's going to be a really important development in our downtown district. So, but I appreciate all of the questions that both Councilmember Vaughn and Councilmember Brox brought up. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Councilmember Fox. Councilmember Lund.
Thank you, Your Honor. Is this last box that's yet to be checked uncheckable, or are we, I mean, that's really my question is how much time do we have to wait for this, or is it simply not something that we'll ever get to?
John.
There we go. People are moving around. I'm hitting wrong buttons. So good question. It's something we were struggling with at HEDRA is, we wanted to let the process play out and see if the commitment letter could come from the developers so that the box could be checked. I think it became apparent to HEDRA as a whole, not unanimously, but as a majority, that there was uncertainty as to when that box would be checked. You took a look at the project itself. There was support for the project. This unchecked box did not want to be the impediment for the project. If the project moves forward, which we all wish it would, it will, great. But we didn't want this to be the impediment for it. With the development agreement that would be signed, and before transfer of the property, we would need to have the bank commitment in place.
John. Councilmember Fulch.
Thank you, Your Honor. So John, just to clarify, because, I know what Councilmember Vaughn was saying about, I get uncomfortable when we're giving away things that are for $1 when they do have value. and in particular, I mean, honestly, the downtown area, I know we were looking at Panache Cidery a while ago, taking on that parcel along the river for $1. And I think it's a little bit different with the Hudson Confluence Development Project, just because millions of dollars went into that, more than just the dollars. So that a lot more complicated. But so anywho, where I'm going with all of this is that, did you negotiate, like what would be a reasonable price? It seems like it's a lot to go from $60,000 to $1. And so Councilmember Vaughn had made that it's not maybe worth $60,000, which, I mean, if you go buy a new plot of land to build a new house, they're at least $60,000. So can you speak to that a little bit about, I'm just not fully understanding why it is that we'd give it away for $1. So what Mr. Siewert is saying is that he can't get the financing unless he gets the property for $1?
Council member, as far as determining the value of the property itself, what we went off of was the assessed valuation from Dakota County, which is that 60,000 level that improves the land value and the improvement of the parking lot itself. Mr. Siewert countered that he did not feel that was an accurate representation, and oftentimes the assessed valuation that Dakota County has is not real accurate. The only way that we could make that assessment from a defendable standpoint would be to have an appraisal, similar to what we talked about earlier tonight with the assessments that went by to determine what that valuation increase would be. We did talk about that a little bit. Ultimately, that's not the direction we went down on that one. And so without having something real tangible to determine what a price would be, that's where the $60,000 had come from there. And I'm not sure if that answered your question, council member.
Well, I mean, to do an assessment, a professional assessment, it's only like what, $350 or something to that effect. I mean, it's not like it's a ton of cash. So why isn't that we wouldn't just pay to have a professional assessment for $350 done and have that answer provided?
Council member, was an option on the table, ultimately was one that was not followed through.
Rather than spending $350, we could be giving away that's worth at least $50,000 for $1. I don't know. That just seems a little odd to me.
Yeah, it's a situation, council member, in which financial information that was presented by the developer showed a gap of at least $60,000 on this one. So whether the land value would be 60,000, 30,000, or 10,000, that gap would still be there. Now, I'll preface that by saying that's a gap that was identified by the developer in something in which Northland financial advisors or a consultant, had not certified, but that's information that was presented. So the case that was being presented by the developer is that there is a need of acquiring this property, and the valuation of that at 60,000 or 30,000, that gap would still be there.
But we didn't have any way of verifying that. I'm sorry. It just strikes me as a little odd because it's like, yeah, I'd be like, yeah, no, I need it for $1. So if you can't back it any other way, I know that Mr. Siewert is genuine and he's trying to do the right thing and providing, because we do direly need other housing options within our community. And so there is a great demand. But if Mr. Siewert would like to speak, I would love to hear from him. I think that he's a very thoughtful young man, and to hear why it is that it's necessary for the $1. I'd really like to hear that.
Councilmember Vaughn. We'll wait and see if Luke raises his hand.
Thank you,
Councilmember.
Honor. Thank you, Honor. Up at HEDRA, Councilor Lund talks about checking that last box. I was saying go ahead with the $1 to get it started, and then we'll do this assessment when it's all done. We'll justify it, and whatever that third party says it is, then inside that development agreement should be what Luke Siewert owes on the value of the land. But that didn't get approval on the HEDRA side because I think the ask is it's $1, and that's what hung me up on the vote. Thank you.
Councilmember Vaughn. Councilmember Lightfeld.
Thank you, Honor. John, can you remind us again? I think it's been a while since I saw the numbers. What's the tax base that this 31 unit building is going to bring in each year?
Council member, I don't know if I have that off the top of my head here, but it'd be about a $5.5 million project altogether. So certainly there'd be a lot more tax revenue coming in here. I'm looking through my information to see if I have that at my fingertips, and unfortunately I don't.
I towards agreeing to this just for the fact that, again, trusting the staff and knowing what's available around town and looking at what we're trying and what we've been working on and focusing on to get new families into the community. The only thing missing down there after this is going to be a little grocery store, right? So everyone can just walk to what they need to get, including, Mississippi Terrace across the street. So I'm going to probably stand on the different side on this, and I'm going to support the land for $1 in this scenario. And I heard someone say, when we talked about the Hudson building, I just heard John say this is a $5.5 million project. Somebody's not building a house. We're not talking about a fantastic coffee shop down there, which is going to bring in a little, some tax base and some revenue on Sack and Whack. This is huge, and I think it's a wonderful thing for the community. And throw my yes in on this when we get to this point.
Lightfeld. Add to that, Councilmember Lightfeld, I think this is a wonderful opportunity for our downtown, for our businesses, for the housing. I know there's gaps and glitches in there, but just to be able to allow Luke to move forward with this and present to us in the future. There could be some glitches along the way, but I think from a tax base, and I look at it as my hope is, like I said to John today, the domino effect. If we see this building, will we see other buildings be redeveloped or updated, or more and more, just that domino effect to help that whole downtown area. And it's a draw. I mean, it would be a draw. My hope is that, it would fill very quickly and we would have 31 more people moving into town to help with our economics. And I know there's glitches, but I really want to give Mr. Siewert the opportunity with our assistance. As Mark and Lori have said, it's been hard for HEDRA, but now it's on our table, and that we simply, the motion is to accept the land for the dollar. And there might be other bumps in the road too that are going to come in the future, but at this point, looking for a motion to sell the land for a dollar. Councilmember Lund.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, John, what's the, how long have we been sitting on this land again?
Remember, we purchased the land in 1985, built a parking lot soon after. We looked at a couple of proposals around 2003, 4, that range. That resurfaced again, I think around 2011, same guy, before the crash and after the crash.
When would you say we were at a point where we were looking to part ways with it?
I would say the initial discussions and parting ways would have been around 2003 or so. There was a previous owner of this property that desired to do a development here, had a concept plan, never moved forward with it. Crash happened, came back after the crash, still owned the property, had some initial discussions. I don't know if we took any formal actions at that point. So really, over the last 15 plus years, we've been looking at it, and the parking lot's been there, oh boys, at least 10, 12 years. So it really eliminates the need for parking on that site.
Right. Its usefulness is not there as much. And then you said that there's been some interest here and there. Do you have any other leads for opportunities for this land, or anything that you've heard of might be around the corner?
Yeah, council member, on this property, the property that HEDRA owns, its value really rests on the property next door. You can't do anything really with a 9,700 square foot property. It really needs to be done in conjunction with the property next to it. And so to have the owner of the home take the lead in development of this property is advantageous. If we were to look at it from a development agency and look at buying the property from an owner next door, that would cost us X. The demolition cost, the relocation cost of the tenants of that property would cost X. It'd be a much more expensive proposition for us to enter into than it would be for that property owner who owns the house to look at acquiring a parking lot. I don't think that this property has much value, any value on its own. It really needs to be in conjunction with the property next door. So the market for developers really rests with whoever owns that property.
Yeah. So we've been flirting with the idea of moving it along, for about 18 years, and you don't have any hot prospects, but we could get some tax revenue going in the near future with that, and then added revenue from the redevelopment of the neighboring property as well. I think Councilmember Liefeld makes good points.
Your Honor.
Councilmember Lund. Councilmember Brox.
I'm sorry, Tina. I was just going to say that Mr. Siewert actually had his hand raised for quite some time there. Maybe you didn't see it, but now his hand is lowered. But
I did. I can sure ask Luke if he wants to raise his. There he is. John, could you bring in Luke Siewert? Thank you.
Hello.
Welcome, Luke.
How's everyone doing?
Good. Thanks for stopping in.
Thank you for looking at this. I appreciate it. And yeah, I had my hand raised and John kind of touched on it. He's done a nice job kind of laying it out of what we've gone through already. And the one item I was going to kind of touch on is what he just mentioned. The value of it really depends on the lot I have, and also kind of looking at the demolition costs is where I'm kind of coming up with the subsidy being needed. And then that one missing item, that loan commitment, the reason I'm struggling of, being able to obtain that is the stage of the project we're at right now. I've been able to get estimates, and I've brought those forth to a couple different lenders to show them. But without having the lot, I can't get solidified construction numbers. So they can give me letters of recommendation, but they said they will not give me a firm loan commitment as we sit right now. So the next step is obtaining the lot so they know there's a site to be built on, and then I can take it to the next step with these construction companies that I've been working with, getting estimates, and then getting more firm numbers to bring to these lenders to get that loan commitment that I'll need. But like John said, I'll need that, of course, prior to doing any construction on this lot. So it's just a step that I can't obtain right now, but it will be done prior to construction.
Thanks, Luke. Council, any questions for Mr. Siewert? I see none. All right, thank you, Luke.
Thank you.
Council, any additional discussion? Okay, at this point, then I would look for a motion to approve a resolution approving sale of property from the Hastings Economic Development and Redevelopment Authority to Luke Siewert on land located at 317 3rd Street, East Hastings, Minnesota 55033, and identified as PID 19-32150-15-080.
So moved, Your Honor.
Councilmember
Second.
Lightfeld. And second by Councilmember Fox. Additional discussion, council. Clerk Henderson, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn,
No.
Councilmember Fulch,
Yes.
Councilmember Fox, Councilmember Liefeld,
Yes.
Councilmember Lund,
Yes.
Councilmember Brock,
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. And that motion prevails. Thank you, John. More to come, right?
More to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, under administration tonight, we have the 2021 CEP Recommendations. Welcome, Dan Waticha.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. If you remember back when we started the 21 budget process, or when we were working through it, there was a lot of uncertainty, particularly around the pandemic, what the impact would be on the economy locally, and how that would carry through on city finances, whether property taxes or local government aid that we received from the state, which as of a few months ago had been looking at a deficit. And part of our design for the budget was we prioritized a number of capital projects, CIP, CEP, capital equipment and capital improvements, but also earmarked the policy that we wouldn't proceed with any of those priorities until there was money in hand. So LGA came in the end of December. We had a similar list that came to you guys in January. Management team looked and said, we have roughly $500,000 of local government aid. Let's look at the priority list and recommend $500,000 worth of projects, and we'll wait until there's more money available. Thankfully, on many fronts, the economy is looking much better than it did when we were developing the budget. We've seen last July and last May to July, and then in November, property tax payments were on target. The state saw what was projected in November as projected last year as a deficit was less of a deficit in November and turned into a surplus in February. And actually even news I saw this morning, they're trending even above that February figure. The state discussion, the legislative discussion about the state budget, no talk about cutting LGA, local government aid. Actually, there's a small supplement that is in the Senate subcommittee proposing to add to LGA to make sure that the formula wouldn't inadvertently cut any cities. So some of our fears about, is that money going to be there? And let's wait to make sure it's in hand before we spend it. Staff is comfortable saying, let's not wait. Let's go ahead. Let's not tie our hands, particularly when we look at some of our projects, design, bidding, lead times, order times. Just some of these take a while, and rather than waiting until July or even December to give them the okay, let's move forward with them now. So between an estimate, still finalizing the audit on 2020, but an estimate of general fund balance above our policy target of 45%, as well as the anticipated certified amount of local government aid we would receive this year, about $1.5 million available for projects. Management team looked through the priority list and is recommending about half of that money be spent now. Some additional pieces being spent through some other funding sources, but utilizing about half of that now. And really, although I just said the recommendation was to go ahead and spend that money, treat it as if it's in hand. We're confident it will be. There's a couple of wrinkles that we think we need to wait on, and those could impact other decisions for projects. We've got an application in for a grant from the Department of Natural Resources for Lake Isabel Park. Comes in, great, matches with our recommendation here. If we do not get that grant in June, stuck with the decision of, do we come up with another $250,000 to backfill that, or do we phase the project over a couple of years? But we won't know that piece until June. So let's hold back on some of the money there. The City Hall Dome project, staff a couple of weeks ago received 11 or 12 responses to the request for proposals. I think they've got it narrowed down to 3 to 5. They're meeting with the first one tomorrow, but it's going to be a longer process working with the architect in order to determine some of the specific scope of the project, and more importantly, the extent of the heating and climate control elements that would be required to put into this project. And although we got $2 million, the state towards this, that updated estimate, know some of the specifics of the scope, cover it, or is the city going to need to cover some additional expenses? The other piece we talked about at our workshop a couple of weeks ago, the American Rescue Plan, although it certainly appears it will be more flexible than the CARES Act was last year. We're still awaiting guidance on that, and whether it might be eligible, as well as if council's interested, it could impact some of the other projects that are on the priority list. Council was, or management team was comfortable not putting them in our recommendations tonight, anticipating that there might be other funding for them. But if it turns out those are not eligible, upgrading the accounting software or police radios, fire radios might become a greater priority than they are tonight. So that's why the recommendation is to spend about $750,000 of general fund dollars, another $325,000 from other sources. 18 projects listed there. These are consensus agreement by the entire management team, department head level staff. And if you look through it, you'll probably also see that To a large extent, they're addressing some deferred maintenance issues throughout the city in a number of different departments. With that, I'll certainly stand for any questions on the process or specific projects.
Thank you, Dan. Any questions or comments, council? Councilmember Lund, does that mean, are you unmuted for a reason? Okay, sorry.
Your Honor.
Member Fulch?
Thank you, Your Honor. Say, Dan, just guessing that we're going to give you approval to move ahead with all of these tonight. Could we get the revised CIP that denotes what it is so that we can see it again with what's been funded and what's still like on that pending status? That would just be nice to be able to see holistically where we are with things.
Yeah, I'd be happy to send that out later tonight or tomorrow. This takes us pretty deep into the C category. The thought was every time we look at it, something might move up or down, but this gets us pretty well into the Cs. There's, I think, probably still $5.5 to $6 million of unfunded projects. That some of those are utility related, so they're on the list, but they're not quite the same pool of money. But there certainly are some needs out there beyond what's recommended here.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, council? If not, then I would look for a recommendation to accept a motion to approve the 2021 budget amendments to include the CIP, CEP items discussed in the memo.
Motion to approve, Your Honor.
Councilmember Brox.
Second.
And Councilmember Fulch. Additional discussion, council. Clerk Henderson, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn,
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch,
Yes.
Councilmember Fox,
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld,
Yes.
Councilmember Lund,
Yes.
Councilmember Brox,
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes, and that motion prevails. Thanks, Dan. For this item, we'll have an introduction again from our city administrator, Dan Waticha, on liquor license fee waiver.
Thank you. As you're familiar, we took action about this time last year to do a partial reimbursement, I think it was initially, but then extended it, a waiver of the on-premise liquor licenses, which includes a few different categories, but recognizing the either outright closures or limited seating capacity, limited hours of operation on bars and restaurants, giving them a break on their license fees, which we continued through an entire year. So those are coming up here at the end of June. The statements or the notices that we would be sending are in the next week to week and a half. So the thought was, if the council is so inclined at extending that waiver for another 6 months or equivalent of 6 months, due to they're still having 50% occupancy limits. I think they have to close up to 250 people and close 11 p.m. Take that action now before staff starts sending out letters, even though the payments might not be due till the end of June. Just easier to keep communications smooth instead of backtracking or changing things if the council's inclined. And the other piece to be recognizing that we're in a different time than we were a year ago. They are open and we want them to be our restaurants and bars to be successful. Council could say this is different than it was a year ago when they were closed outright, and could choose to keep those fees in place. But certainly want to give you that opportunity.
Thank you, Dan. Council discussion. Any council member Lund?
Yeah, does anybody recall off the top of their head how we did this last time? Did we talk about deferring or circling back at a certain point, if that's right? I don't know if anybody remembers exactly. It's been a long year. Dan?
I believe the initial waiver, which was for 2.5 months or something, the initial piece was a matter of let's revisit this in a couple of months and see if it should extend, at which point we extended it the remainder of that 6 months, or the new 6 months on top of what was the end of the year. And then in November, prior to the next half-year period coming up, council simply said, we're doing the next 6 months. There's still limits on their operations. So this is similar to what we did in November. There's
Right.
still limits on their operations. Do you want to extend that waiver or not?
Yeah, and I just get the conversation started here. There's one person that wasn't on the council at the time too. So, you know, looking at this as a 12-month snapshot, I don't know if we have to look at it like that. As far as this fee structure is, you know, we could do a similar approach. You know, I look at the council meeting November 1st is, I think, the first Monday of November. You know, we could put a pin in that date as the next time we think about what the next 6 months look like. It gives them a couple of months heads up if we decide that, you know, in retrospect, it was a great 2021 for everybody, and you know, fees in place might make sense. You know, we just voted on you know, something where, you know, maybe we weren't recouping all the value that was possibly there. You know, we can't always be you know, doing things for nothing either, right? There's a point where we need to keep in mind the overall finances of the city, of course. So, you know, if they're half capacity right now, and that's similar to what it was in, you know, back in the fall and whatnot, you know, maybe that's where we say for the next 6 months, it's waived. Let's look at it in 6 months. It gives us the opportunity to do, you know, 50% of the fee for the year.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Lund. Dan?
And just for clarification, this is 6 months. This would be from July 1st to December 31st. So this is a 6-month proposal, or half the fee. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I misunderstood that. I thought that was for the whole year. So we would have then the opportunity in November then to look at what the next 6 months might look like. Thank you.
Honor?
Councilmember Fulch.
I just wanted to go on to say that this would be an eligible expense for using the American Rescue Plan money that we've just received, what was it, $2 million? I'm forgetting.
2.6 million.
2.6, thank you very much. And so, so yeah, this would be an eligible cost for that. So, so we would be recouping it, but I'm in support of continuing this. Just note, when you speak to our restaurant owners, they're not out of the weeds yet. They're still in recovery mode, some more than others. It is, you know, and again, we don't know what, you know, the next 6 months looks like. I don't know how many of us have high schoolers, but, you know, my kid last Monday from high school, I received 5 notices from the school that he had been exposed during class to somebody with COVID. And so the high school has a huge spike going through it. And so who knows what happens, you know, in the rest of the community, what's going to come out, you know, as these mutations come forward. So I'm in support of continuing with this waiver. And I agree with Councilmember Lund that we reassess in November and see how things, and hopefully, God willing, we'll be coming out of this at that time. So thanks.
Councilmember Fox.
Naturally, I will be abstaining from this vote. I just wanted to echo Councilmember Fulch's support of Councilmember Lund's idea of revisiting it. I do want to mention on behalf of the restaurants and bars that all throughout Hastings, that November, December, January, and February are very dark months, and they're very hard to have extra money to pay fees. So I really like revisiting it. Let's just keep that in mind as we have the next conversation.
Thank you, Councilmember Fox. Councilmember Fulch, did you want to make a motion to that?
Sure, Your Honor. Thank you. So moved. We'll go ahead and we'll grant the waiver for the next 6 months.
Okay, thank
I'll
you,
second.
Councilmember Fulch and Councilmember Brox. Thank you. Additional discussion, Council. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn,
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch,
Yes.
Councilmember Fox,
Abstain.
Councilmember Liefeld,
Yes.
Councilmember Lund.
Yeah.
Councilmember Brox,
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. Motion prevails with Councilmember Fox abstaining. Council, do you have any announcements? I have a few. Help keep Hastings parks and trails clean, safe, and beautiful. Plan a DIY cleanup with your family, community group, business, or just yourself. Choose a day between April 1st and May 3rd and coordinate with our Parks and Rec Department. Cleanup supplies available for pickup. Celebrate Earth Day with your self-guided story walk with large book pages from Isle of You by David LaRochelle along the trail of the Levy Park to JC Park. This is a free event recommended for families with youth 10 and under in partnership with Pleasant Hill Library. The story walk will be posted from Thursday, April 22nd through Monday, April 26th. Nature Center has a youth birding competition this weekend, April 24th and 25th. Be a backyard birder or pick your park and list all the birds seen in 24 hours. Info at Carpenter Nature Center website. Meetings coming up, we have a Heritage Preservation Commission, 7 o'clock Tuesday, April 20th. Tuesday, April 22nd, we have a HEDRA workshop at 5 p.m. Monday, April 26th, there's a Planning Commission at 7 p.m. And Monday, May 3rd, is our next City Council meeting. For a motion to adjourn, Council. I was going to say, nobody wants to adjourn? Councilmember Brox.
Second.
And Councilmember Vaughn, a second. No discussion. Clerk Henderson, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn, Councilmember Fulch,
Yes.
Councilmember Fox,
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld, Councilmember Lund,
Yes.
Councilmember Brox, Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. And we are adjourned. John, again, thank you for all your work. And Dan, thank you for all your work.